What's up, Odin's Chosen? I'm Brave, and today I'm giving you the blueprint to become the ultimate Protection Warrior in Mythic Plus. Struggling to hold aggro on massive pulls, getting deleted by bosses, or maybe you're just ready to take your tanking skills to the next level. This guide has everything you need. Talents, gear, rotations, and pro-level dungeon strategies. Let's turn you into the shield your team can't live without. Alright, now let's talk talents. The backbone of your success is a Protection Warrior in Mythic Plus. Picking the right talents can mean the difference between a smooth run and a disaster. So here's the setup that I use that will make you unstoppable. Intervene. Not many players take this or know how to use it, but in this video, I'll be teaching you exactly when to use it and use it correctly. There's two crucial mechanics you can intervene as a Protection Warrior this season. The first one being Heaving Wretch. Heaving Wretch does high single target damage to one player, and in higher key levels this can one-shot DPS players. As a Protection Warrior, all you need to do is target whoever Blightbone is targeting with Heaving Wretch, and then cast your Intervene spell. All you need to do after that is stay within 10 yards until the channel goes off. The second mechanic you can intervene that's really important is Fiery Ricochet from the Dread Captain Lockwood in Siege of Borealis. This does high single target damage to 3 players, and if it gets on the tank, it doesn't really do much damage to tanks, so it's ideal that you intervene this. It helps the healer out a whole bunch. There's a third mechanic, but it's significantly harder to intervene. In City of Threads on the second boss, the Fangs of the Queen, Vix in the first stage with knife throwing random players. This does high single target damage. This along with icicles is nearly enough to kill DPS players if the healer isn't making the healing check. So what I like to do is I make a good attempt to target whoever Vix is targeting before he casts and hit an intervene. This can be quite difficult as the cast on this knife throw is very short. The second optional talent I like to take is Berserker Shout. Berserker Shout's really useful in Mists of Tyrannus Scythe, Siege of Borealis, and the Stone Vault. In Mists of Tyrannus Scythe, the first boss does a giant AoE fear that fears your entire party. This can remove it. Now keep in mind, when you use Berserker Shout, your allies do have to be within 12 yards of you for it to work. If you didn't use Berserker Shout here, you would just put it into Honed Reflexes for the 5% cooldown reduction. Let's talk about our hero class. For Protection Warrior, you are always playing Mountain Thane. Colossus sadly just isn't really good enough. It's getting some more buffs, so maybe it'll start being more comparable. I know Mountain Thane this week's getting a nerf, but the rage generation from Mountain Thane and Mythic Plus and the damage reduction it gives you is just too good to pass up. So our first choice node we pick is Storm Bolts. This makes it to where Storm Bolt also hits 2 additional nearby targets, which is pretty useful. The cooldown's increased by 10 seconds, which isn't a really big deal for Mythic Plus, as you really don't need the extra cooldown here. The next talent is Physical Damage reduced by 2%, and then Thunder Blast reduces damage you take by an extra 8% for 5 seconds. And this is really big. This adds on top of all your other damage reductions and makes it to where you're really just taking a lot of small hits instead of really big ones. Now we always pick Thorum's Might here because lightning strikes generating 3 rage and AoE is really big. Plus we get bigger executes, which we really like. Now we do Flashing Skies here because whenever you Thunder Blast it calls down a lightning strike. Let's talk about the Protection Warrior tree. Realistically, there's not too many different options you can take here. One thing you could do differently is take Heavy Repercussions. This makes it to when you shield slam, it extends the duration of your shield block by 1 second. This makes it to where in single target you can keep your shield block up by 100% uptime, whereas with End of the Fray, you won't have exactly 100% uptime, but it's close. A few keynotes here are going to be Battle-Scarryed Veterans, a huge defensive for Prot Warriors. Violent Outburst is really useful for big AoE situations. Champion's Bulwark makes it to where whenever you shield charge it grants you shield block. Indomitable is your only sustain tool realistically. Defender's Aegis gives you 2 charges of shield wall, and Blood Surge gives you infinite rage and AoE pack. Shield block makes it to where you can block spells. This is really important for heavy hitting spell boss mechanics. There's a few of these we'll go over later in the video. Let's talk about Spell Reflection. Spell Reflection as a Prot Warrior is going to be one of your greatest tools, and I'm going to tell you a few situations that I find it most valuable. First off, in the Dawnbreaker on the first boss, a lot of Prot Warriors, I see them, they make the mistake of trying to Spell Reflect the Shadow Bolts. Now instead of reflecting the Shadow Bolts, I like to save it for the Obsidian Beam as it provides you a flat 25% magic damage reduction. This paired with Demoralizing Shout's damage reduction is almost always enough to make sure you don't die to the Obsidian Beam. The next dungeon I find Spell Reflect really useful in is going to be Grimbatol. Now, while you can't really do much to spell reflect in terms of the bosses, on the last boss he summons the tentacles, and if you run into them they'll stun you. What you can do is pop spell reflect and run into as many as you can, as you won't be stunned by the tentacles, so you have the 5-second duration to clear as many tentacles for your team as possible. Now, on the way to the Forge Master Throngus in his room, you're going to encounter the Molten Giants. He's going to cast Lava Fist. Now you can deflect this, which doesn't do damage back to the mob, but it also doesn't do any damage to you. This is really important as Lava Fist hits really hard. The next mob in the Grimbatol is going to be the Twilight Flame Renders, Shadow Flames Flash. This is completely reflectable and does damage back to the mob. This will do tons of damage to you as a tank. Being able to reflect it back to the mob is really important. The next really important spell reflect is going to be in the trash on the way to the Mist Caller. You're going to find the Mistveil Guardians. They're going to cast Anima Slash. This does a giant damage over time to the tank. You can cast your spell reflection and it will reflect the damage over time back to the mob itself. The next reflect I find that's really important is in the mobs on the way to Skarmarok. The Voidbound Despoiler's Shadow Claw can be completely reflected back to the mob. It does huge damage to the mob and it saves you from taking the damage yourself. The last really important spell reflect is going to be in the City of Threads from Izo the Grand Splicer. He's going to cast Splice and that's completely reflectable every single time. It's a large damage over time, will help you do more damage and take less damage as a Prot Warrior. Let's talk Spell Block. Spell Block's one of Prot Warrior's best defensive spells, as it makes it to where you're able to block spells for 30 seconds. I'm going to go over a few situations where I find it's most important in Mythic Plus. First off, we're going to start in City of Threads. Every boss in this dungeon does something really important to Spell Block. On the first boss, he casts Subjugate, which does a tremendous amount of single target damage to the tank. With Spell Block active, this won't do very much damage at all, and you won't have to worry about it. On the second boss, on stage 2, Vix is going to cast Rhyme Dagger at you, which is going to do a ton of single target damage and apply a bleed over time. With Spell Block up, you'll block this and it won't do almost any damage at all. On the third boss, you can Spell Block every single thing he does. The Using Smash, the Blood Surge, which you can easily avoid, so I wouldn't recommend standing in it, and the Dark Pulse, all completely spell blockable. And the last boss, the Process of Elimination. This does tremendous amounts of single target damage to the tank. With spell block up, this will do almost 0 damage at all. The next dungeon I want to talk about is going to be the Dawnbreaker. With spell block, the Obsidian Beam is completely blockable, so if you're out of spell reflection, don't have Demoralizing Shout, you can always throw in spell block to reduce the damage you'll take. On the second boss, with the Terrifying Slam, it's going to do a tremendous amount of single target to the tank. With spell block up, this will do almost none. It's a really important ability to be using correctly. The last thing I want to talk about with spell blocks is going to be Throngus's Molten Flurry. Molten Flurry does a portion of physical and fire damage. You'll notice if you just have your regular block up, you'll still be taking a lot of damage, but with spell block, you'll take almost none. Now let's talk about Battle-Scarred Veteran. Battle-Scarred Veteran makes it to whenever you're brought below 30% health, you take 80% less damage and you get 100% increased healing. Once this dummy here brings me below the 80% threshold, here it is. I got Battle-Scarred Veteran. What I do, I always save my last stand and that pretty much full heals me. Full HP. Let's talk about Ignore Pain. Ignore Pain will ignore 50% of the damage taken up to 3.4 million, which is approximately 30% of your maximum health. So it's important to get a weak aura to track what percent of Ignore Pain you have up. You see when I charge in here and I Ignore Pain, it'll only go to 30% at a maximum. So no matter how many times I press Ignore Pain, it doesn't go over 3.4 million. Let's talk about my single target rotation for bosses. So for bosses, I'm always going to lead with my charge, taunt, then I'm going to do my shield charge to get that on cooldown, and it gives me a shield block charge. I'm going to try and get my Ignore Pain up right away, then I'm going to do my shield slam, avatar, do my thunderclap, do my free revenge, shield slam. While all of this is happening, I'm making sure I'm pressing my shield blocks and my Ignore Pain as needed. I'm going to be using my shield slam, my thunder blasts. Pretty much you just rinse and repeat that. Make sure you keep your shield blocks up, demoralizing shout when you need to, keep your Ignore Pains up. Now on single target, when I have my violent outbursts, pretty much always send it in shield slams, and then you want to make sure you're using your shield charge pretty much off cooldown to make sure you're keeping your shield blocks up. Let's talk about my Aoe Rotation. So what I like to do is I always open with charge and taunt, and then I do a shield charge as soon as I can. Then I demoralizing shout, avatar, Ignore Pain, thunder blast, and then I shield slam, and then I thunder blast, and then I shield slam, and then I thunder blast, and then I do my shield blocks, Ignore Pains, and then once I know I'm not going to move anymore, I use my champion spear. Then I repeat the thunder blast, shield slam combination, all while maintaining your Ignore Pain shield blocks. Once you get demoralizing shout back up, you demo shout on cooldown. You always shield slam time. Then once you get your Thunder Blast proc, you're going to use Thunder Blast. Then you just rinse and repeat. You just always manage your Ignore Pain, your Shield Slams, Shield Charge on cooldown pretty much. Keep your Ignore Pains up. If you get the Thunder Blast proc, you always want to try and prioritize it. So for the optimal burst rotation for Prot Warrior, you can do tremendous amounts of AoE burst with Seeing Red. So here I'm at 6 stacks. What I'm going to do is I'm going to Thunder Blast, get my full stacks, Avatar, Champion, Spear, and then I do my Thunder Blast, and that's going to be 1.4 million DPS. For stat priority for Prot Warriors, you're going to want as much haste as possible. Then you're going to want versatility. Then you're going to want mastery. And then last, you don't really need, but you can get some crit. For trinkets, Arakara Sack Brood is really important. You're always going to pick this. Next off, you can choose between the Skarmorak Shard, which is going to be more damage, or you can choose the Swarm Lord's Authority, which is going to give you some tankiness and survivability. So for gems, you're going to be using the Culminating Blasphemite, and then you want to choose one of each different gem color. For enchants, for chest, you use Crystalline Radiance. Legs, you get the 930 strength and agility, plus the 900 stamina. For rings, you choose versatility. For the weapon, you can choose Radiant Power. For your cloak enchant, I recommend getting Leech. For bracers, I recommend getting Leech. And that's it, Odin's Chosen. You're now armed with everything you need to dominate Mythic Plus as a Protection Warrior. If you found this helpful, smash that like button and share this video with your friends. They'll thank you for it. Don't forget to subscribe for more WoW tips, guides, and tricks. Drop your questions down below or your favorite tanking tips in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, stay strong, fearless, and keep protecting the team.